From Alachua, Florida, I'm Amrita-Keli.
I'm Krishna Kishore.
And I'm Namamrita. Welcome to Nectar Talks, from the heart of New Raman Reti, the largest Hare Krishna community in North America.
And the home of thousands of Bhakti Yoga practitioners. In our ongoing series of live interviews, we explore a range of spiritual topics, introducing you to inspirational community members and guest speakers with diverse backgrounds and experience.
Like bees searching for nectar, we seek to extract pearls of wisdom from how they live their lives and the spiritual lessons they can impart to us and our listeners.
If you're seeking nectar, look no further. All right.
Let's get started.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to the 24th episode of Nectar Talks.
Hi.
We're so grateful to have with us here this evening Her Grace Sudharma Prabhu. And she's joining us from her home in Alachua. And we're neighbors now.
Yeah, Amrita, you've moved in the neighborhood. Not so far away either. But thank you for having me very much. It's such a pleasure to be here and to be here with you, frankly. I've always enjoyed your association and company.
I feel exactly the same way. And, to our listeners, when we approached Sudharma Prabhu and asked her if she was interested in being interviewed, when we started connecting previous to right now, she asked me, why is it that you're interested in interviewing me? And, I felt that I knew you and I had some affectionate relationship with you. And also I really want to talk about the radio show.
Oh, thank you.
What I found out through our conversation was that just like every single devotee out there, you have such an incredible, beautiful, invigorating story and message and life. And, digging into that tonight will reveal that, that mine of gold that we're all dependent on to sustain us in our devotional life. So I'm really excited to dig into that with you. Just to give the audience an idea of what we're going to dive into. Sudharma Prabhu was a brahmacharini for 10 years and did some extraordinary, very unique type of preaching, both in the Pacific Northwest and even in Southeast Asia. And she had some really incredible projects, like opening this bookstore in New Vrindavan, which was extremely successful, as well as her work with the Vaishnavi ministry, and now pioneering the Hare Krishna community radio, which we're going to talk about, and there's a call to action for that. So please heed the call. It's exciting. It's really exciting. And also her spearheading this movement of radical personalism, which I think we're going to hear a lot of weaved in through this conversation. What is that, and how does that really encapsulate Sudharma Prabhu's mood and mission as a devotee in Srila Prabhupada's movement? So are you ready to get started?
I am, and I'd like to actually just start by commenting on what you were saying. You said like so many devotees, and we've had these stories and amazing experiences in our devotional life, and they've taken all different kinds of forms and shapes, and oftentimes as we're living them, we're not really thinking about them so much. But when we look back and we see everything that Krishna's given us, and how incredibly special our lives have been, how non-ordinary, how Krishna's been there with us at every moment in our lives. And we just have so much, all of us do, not just to be grateful for individually, but also to share, and the world is such a tipsy-turvy topsy whatever kind of place right now, that it's really important that, as devotees, we remember, who we are and what we have to give, and kind of, skip over all of this polarity and argumentation and all of these different things, and really reach out to each other as individuals, as souls, as people who care, about where we're each going in life. I mean, none of us, we're all affected when one of us is weak, much less if we're all struggling. And, we all benefit when we're all doing well. So we have an interrelational duty to each other to genuinely care, and also to know, very directly that not only is Krishna situated in everyone's heart or in every atom, but he's cognizant and personally present in that heart. And when we interact, there's something much more beautiful that's attainable than just simply taking each other for granted, or, seeing each other as a tool to get something done. I mean, this is an opportunity for us in every interaction to awaken our devotional life and to give what's special in our life to other people. Yeah. I guess that's a lot to start with, but that's what you made me think of when you were speaking.
It's so wonderful. I feel that this is what gives us hope, that we all have an important contribution. And I feel like it seems to be your mission to really pull that out of people, and to create a platform, both just in your conversations with people, as well as a literal platform where we can encourage one another and reach out to one another.
And we need to do that. Yeah. I think one thing that happens is that, we're born into this world with so many hopes. You see the bright faces of children and playing, and, so many hopes we come into the world with. We don't really know, where we are, or what the future is going to be, or what's really going to happen. And I think even sometimes as devotees, we tend to think, that our lives, they're blessed. But we forget that we're living in a world that is a certain way and has certain characteristics. And, we are going to be going through the actions of various types of suffering in this life, birth, death, disease, and old age. And they're not meant to be easy. They're not things that you just pretend aren't happening or aren't existing. But, as you go through these things, something very unique and special happens within the heart, in the way that Krishna lets you know that he's there. And that is the beauty. That's the true beauty and gift of devotional service. Not that we think we're going to escape disease, or not that we think that we aren't going to have trauma in our lives, or not that we aren't going to miss our family when the members pass away, or any of these different things, but rather that as we go through those things and genuinely, embrace, because we have to, the experience, to see how Krishna manifests for us, to let us know that it's okay. These are just evolutions in a temporary world that are meant specifically to help us build our faith in Krishna.
Thank you so much. And I love that you and I were talking a little bit about, what is nectar, when we're talking about nectar talks, and, we're having conversations with devotees all over the community. And what do we want to focus on? We want to focus on things that are nourishing to our spiritual creeper, our devotional creeper. But that doesn't mean skimming over everything that was, like you said, a heartache or a challenge, or something that was, a failure or a disappointment. Exactly. It's the beauty of seeing Krishna's hand in our life, no matter what circumstances we're in, and how empowering that can be, because we're all sharing that human experience together. So thank you so much for just encouraging us to to be real and authentic, and also to see the grace that is carrying us through all of these events in our life.
Well, okay, we're taught to see matter and spirit side by side. And to be able to distinguish between matter and spirit means that we have to make many distinguishments, if that's a word, in life. We have to be able to understand what's happening on this hand and what's happening on that hand. Many of the experiences that we have in life are mixed, and we have to be able to separate the curd and the whey, so to speak. We have to be able to see the Krishna. We have to be able to see what we can leave behind because it's temporary, because it's Maya. And we have to want to and have the strength and the vigor and the determination to do that, which, oftentimes comes from devotees. But I think that when we can clearly recognize, our life experiences and see that they're going to include the very most wonderful times and the very most difficult times, and all of them are blessings to take shelter of Krishna, to always be totally dependent upon the Lord and his devotees, that we learn how to see matter and spirit and make those discernments and discriminations. If we're living in this world, even in this wonderful movement, we're going to be in contact with the material energy, and things are going to happen. Cars are going to hit each other, people are going to get diagnosed with illness, all kinds of, people are going to get discouraged or depressed or feel alone or fragmented. All these things are going to go on. But now we have a means to be able to do something more with that, and to learn from that, and to help others to overcome those things. So that's, we can't even pick up our finger if Krishna doesn't let us do it. I mean, we see that when we encounter illness, we see what a blessing it is just to be able to, walk across the house, right? So, yeah. Am I making sense?
You're absolutely making sense. I'm wanting to sort of piece this together. I'm going to start from the beginning. Sure. And see if we can look back, like you said, and see that stream running through your life.
Okay, sure. Where would you like to start?
Well, I realized that I don't know where you were born and raised. I know that you joined the movement when you were about 19. Is that right?
That's right.
And the other day you were telling me that you also had a very lovely father.
Yes, I did.
So and I remember hearing on your radio show that Christmas was a very special holiday in your home that you have very fond memories of. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Have you ever played Monopoly?
Yes.
Okay. So the yellows?
Yes.
Okay. So the whole city is Atlantic City, right? The whole board is modeled after the town called Atlantic City back before it was like a gambling place. And Ventnor Avenue is the street that I was born on. And my father was, he had just come out of the military, and he was managing an apartment complex there. And I took birth and that was my first home, Ventnor Avenue, from Monopoly.
Cool.
My name's Susan Smith. It's like one of the most generic names, that you can have, practically, like All America Sue, it's kind of like right in the middle of the mix of America, right? And our family were Mayflower descendants. They were directly in line. They came, signed the Mayflower Compact and did the whole thing. So, I have that type of descendancy, that kind of family background, or whatever, if that's what you want to call it. But at the same time, my family were always like the black sheep in that arrangement. So, we've always been sort of like, like there's always been the side that's always been a little bit more like, not quite on the normal path, always kind of doing
Okay.
thing. So I don't know, somehow those things seem to just keep going. But my dad was a really, really good father to me. He wanted to be a Catholic priest, and so he went into the seminary, and he didn't care for it very much. I mean, he had been raised Catholic his whole life, and he was so looking forward to this. But I mean, his words were, Sue, they were just a bunch of drunks with red noses, like they were always wanting to drink the wine. Like that was kind of a derogatory thing to say, but what he was really trying to say is, I thought I was going to get a religious, spiritual experience, and it wasn't there. There were a lot of rules and regulations and a lot of things, but the happiness wasn't there. And so he left the Catholic Church, and he tried all the different religions as a child. I remember we went to the Episcopalian Church and the Lutheran Church and the Presbyterian Church. And, we tried all of them, we just kind of went through all of them. And then my father gave up. And I kept walking up the street on Sundays. There was a little Presbyterian church. I'd go there and go to their Sunday classes and sometimes go there after school, so I kept like a little sort of religious connection going. And in my years up until I through middle school, and then I moved to California, and my whole life changed. It went, the whole direction of everything that was happening, in the 60s and 70s with music and experimental living and, philosophies of life that, went beyond the everyday norm. And I just really got into a space that I wanted to understand, like really what life really was meant for. I just really felt a drive, like a compelling drive. And I would go to libraries and look for books and try and talk to people. No one knew what the heck I was talking about. And then one day, I was traveling cross country with a friend, and we stopped in a to see somebody. I didn't know the person, they did. And they were having a conversation. I was just kind of walking around the room, and I saw the Bhagavad Gita on the bookshelf in the room. And that right away, it just like, okay, I think this is what I was looking for, and I took it off the shelf. I read one verse and I was like, yeah, this is what I've been looking for. I was like, where did you get this book? And he's like, they're all over the place. You just go out on campus. I didn't know what he was talking about. But a few years later, maybe like 1 or 2 years later, I actually met some people who knew what Krishna consciousness was, where the temple was, what the books were, shared a few books with me so that I could read them, took me to a couple programs. And then at a transitional point in my life, I thought, am I going to go left or am I going to go right? Okay, let's see what Krishna arranges. And, because I did believe in God at that point, and I ended up at the Hare Krishna temple. And it was like 7:30 at night, and everyone was getting ready to go to sleep. And they said, okay, well, you can come in and you can stay tonight if you promise to stay for a week. And I said, well, do you have service I can do? Because I figured that was the point. And they said, oh yeah, we have plenty of that. So
we have a lifetime of service for you.
Yes, I moved into the temple, and that was in Berkeley in the early 70s. Yeah, I had just a few weeks before I saw Prabhupada at Rath Yatra, and that was, yeah. So, yeah.
So you were 19 at the time.
Right.
You were a college student.
Yeah. Well, I took that semester off, but I've been, yes.
And you were at a crossroads where you were making decisions, I'm sure, praying a lot. And then this Rath Yatra happened with Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
And that's the one that went down Golden Gate Park.
Yes, in Golden Gate Park. Yeah, that's the one with the famous picture with Prabhupada with his hands raised and all the devotees around him, like with the cartels.
What was that like? What was that experience like for you?
Well, I mean, I really didn't know what was going on around me. It was my first experience like that. I had never had an experience like that. So I had many, many mixed feelings. But a couple things really stood out for me, in the day, despite my complete and utter confusion. One was that the people I was living with, they had been to Rath Yatra before and they had sari. So they had dressed me up in a sari to go to this event. And anyone who knows me knows I'm not the best when it comes to stuff like that anyway. So my sari was like trailing, behind me, which it always does, even now. But somebody came up to me and she said, "My name's Radharani," she said, "and Krishna's laughing at you because you can't keep your sari on. Let me see if I can help you." And she tucked it all back in and got it on me so that it would stay on for a little while. And then we came to Golden Gate Park, and I was kind of far away from Lady Subhadra's cart, like I was just in the middle of the mix. But when Prabhupada got off to walk to the stage, he walked by, not so far from me. And, in my own, Paramatma existence, where Krishna, makes you think you're, like you're in the middle of the world or in the middle of a lotus flower or whatever. It really did seem to me like Prabhupada, when he walked by, that he acknowledged me, just tilted his head down. I felt a connection there. And then Prabhupada walked up, and I didn't know why. I had no affinity towards this person. I hadn't thought about, I didn't know his name. I thought that gurus were supposed to be plump and jolly and round. Like I had no conception whatsoever, but Prabhupada somehow, made me feel something more. And then when he walked up to the stage, there were these Christians there, and they had been heckling all through the parade route. Anyone who was there that year, they would probably remember them because they came out in masses. And the whole time they were just trying to create a disturbance, about this being hell and all of that. And Prabhupada got up on the stage and he was sitting there so quietly. And to me, it looked like the whole world, like everything was rippling except Prabhupada. And Prabhupada just looked still. And he said, "Tell them to be quiet." And it stopped. And I don't know, if it's because like Guru Kripa and his men like jumped on them or, it just, or what happened, but they were quiet for the rest of the ceremony and for the rest of the day. And I was able to hear Prabhupada speak, and it was the first time. And he, in that same way, where everything else was rippling and he was just sitting still, and he was saying, "You are not the body," And that was very profound for me. And I didn't understand how profound it was, but like I said, not long after that, I moved into the temple.
Wow. I had the experience when when you said you read a verse from the Gita and you're like, this is it. It's almost like I can imagine when you heard Srila Prabhupada, it's like, this is what I've been approaching people about. This is what I'm asking about. And here he is.
I was just actually, I was just totally kind of like, huh? What? I wasn't expecting it. I had no idea that I was going to have such a profound experience that day. And it took me a long time to sort of sort out what had actually really happened, because it isn't just what I was seeing, it was what was happening inside of me.
Yes. Incredible. So after you have this amazing experience, you're convinced to stay in the temple for a week. Did you leave after the week, or is that at the beginning of your brahmachari career?
No, I never left the temple.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Sudharma Prabhu never leaves the temple after that. She joins when she's 19.
Yeah.
And what I learned from you, which I think is so super cool, and what I want to hear more about, is that you began a career as an itinerant preacher, as you called it. So you were traveling, and you did a lot of this either with one companion or solo. And that happened both in the US, but also overseas.
Yeah. Well, that followed 10 years of street Sankirtan, and that was nonstop. That was every single morning, getting up. And sometimes, before the morning program was over, we'd be in the van on our way to the airports, or, I, like many of my god sisters, spent years actually living in vans and traveling around the United States, going to all kinds of engagements, everything from a street corner in Kansas City to a football game to a bar at night to, you name it, we went everywhere, wherever there was a chance to really make money. I mean, in those days, it was kind of really geared on finances, which was, unfortunate, but.
Because this was a little bit later. It was mid 70s.
So right. So that was after 10 years of doing it. And I have to say that whatever, we might say about the early days of Sankirtan and all its pluses and minuses, the fact of the matter was it really fixed my mind. I mean, my mind became very one-pointed. So for me, traveling like that, like you just described, going with one person and doing, itinerant preaching on my own, or even being alone in Southeast Asia, I never blinked an eye. I mean, it was just a continuation, right? Like I was just, on the road, and I was just going wherever Krishna was sending me. That's what I was doing. And yeah, it was a pretty ecstatic experience. I had an interest to go overseas because, in those days, they used to have these zones, right? And one person would be in charge of like a huge area. And in this particular case, there was like 1 or 2 large temples in North America. And then, his zone included like all of Southeast Asia, and there was nothing going on there. And I just thought, my God, there's all those people in Southeast Asia, can I go? Can I just go? Okay, yeah, you can go, but you have to, find your way there, and you're on your own. So, okay, I'm going. So I went to Hong Kong,
Yes, I love this. I just love this.
I went to Hong Kong, and there was like a little center there with 2 men living in it. It was actually 2 businessmen.
Were they?
Well,
were they
sometimes
locals?
a third would come, huh?
Were they locals?
One was, no, they weren't from Hong Kong. One was a devotee named Jagat Guru, who was the first, he was a Prabhupada initiate, if I'm recalling correctly. And he was Chinese by birth, and he had been raised as a member of the Red Guard. So he was this very incredible personality, but he loved Prabhupada, Well, no, wait, I think maybe anyway, there may have been 2 people. There may have been Jagat Guru and this fellow from the Red Guard, but they were amazing. I mean, they were very dedicated. Yeah, no, Jagat Guru was the guy in the Red Guard, and Yasomati was the other devotee, and he was doing translations into Chinese. Okay. And then there were 2 devotees, Jitarati and his name was, I think, Tota Gopinath at that time, or Thakur Haridas. I can't remember. I think it was Tota Gopinath at that time. And they were running business. And so they didn't know what they were going to do with a single woman living in their little 2-bedroom or 4-room apartment complex or whatever it was. So they told me to go live at the YWCA. So I did. And I just get up in the morning, and I'd go out and buy flowers, and I'd go get a stack of books, and I'd go out on the main road in Hong Kong and, speak a little Chinese and a little English, and, talk to all the Aussies, the Australians, and the Chinese, and sell everybody books. And it was so fast because there was just so many people, and I'd make like $100 an hour, which I had never done before on Sankirtan, but there was just so much activity, and everyone had money. And it was so intense and so incredible at the same time. And I'd come back to the temple, and even though I wasn't staying there, I'd like get the flowers for the deities and wash the floors and make it nice for Krishna. And then on Sunday, people just started to come. Like wow. They never had anyone come before, and they just started to come. Some of them were people I met on Sankirtan, and some of them were just like, it was just flukes. I mean, it was just Krishna, And the temple just started growing, and all, by the time that I left there, they were going on Harinam, and, and all different kinds of people were coming and everything. And yeah, it was really an amazing experience for me. I loved it there. I would have stayed forever, but I didn't have citizenship. And so, and then, during that time I would travel also to the Philippines, and then I also did a tour traveling, starting from Singapore, and going through Malaysia. And, you know, I mean, I was at curiosity. I was a young girl and I knew the philosophy, and I'd go to people's homes, like, you know, like I'd find these people like out of nowhere, right? You know, you know, I would walk into a store and there would be a picture of Prabhupada, and I'd start talking to the owner, and then he'd invite me back and I'd do a program and get to know the family. And then they would have me stay with them for like a month, and we would do regular programs, and like 200, 300 people would come, just like, you know, crowded around in some of these environments, because they'd never seen a young girl, you know, white person speaking Bhagavad Gita like that before. So it was an enchanting experience for me. And I came to really realize how unlimited it was, what we could do in terms of giving people Krishna, you know, what the potential was actually like for us out there. I mean, from distributing candles on the, you know, on the streets of San Francisco to, you know, make a few extra dollars, you know, to actually really being able to go out and be in people's homes and give them books and sets of books, and, you know, having people offering to give me land and, you know, all kinds of things. It was amazing experience, you know, and I think it was something that was just in me naturally, you know. I always like adored Johnny Appleseed, like the idea that he would go, you know, from house to house and plant apple seeds on the way. And he was a Christian, and he was, you know, teaching people to care about your fellow man and stuff. Like, I always thought that was so cool, you know. So I guess it was kind of in me. I always wanted to be a pioneer, you know.
Yes. And when in speaking with you, you said that, you know, previous to meeting the devotees, you had some interests you were thinking about pursuing, like in college, and you liked science, and you also said ambassadorship was something that interested you. And I'm thinking that, you know, it's your nature, but something, I love that you use the word enchantment, that this kind of experience is enchanting, and it is so, it's just so deeply a part of your inner world now. I can imagine. And so
exactly.
I'm wondering what you can say to us, because, you know, I'm sitting here, you know, I have young children, and, you know, we all have our different circumstances, but if we all have some creativity, we all have some gifts, we all have some preferences for how we express our devotion or share devotion, how we give Krishna. So how did you harness the bravery to go and do what you did? How can we do that? What can you tell us?
Well, I think in my case, I was put in a position where I really didn't have a choice. I was told by temple authorities that I had to go out in these vans and sell like records and candles and do all this stuff, which was, you know, very unnatural for me in my persona, you know, in what I was attracted to doing and how I viewed life and things like that. So I developed a very deep meditation when I was out doing it, because, you know, it couldn't just be about that experience. It had to be a connected experience. And, you know, from that deep meditation, of course, then many other things became feasible, because it wasn't about the external environment. It was about the internal environment, you know. So I think that the best thing that we can really do in life is never forget two things: introspection and prayer. You know, we should always be contemplating, you know, very deeply inside of ourselves about who we are and where we're going and how we're interacting and giving and viewing the world, and what kind, you know, if we're hurting others, if we're doing these things. I think it's really, really vital to always be aware of our actions, you know, and how they're impacting. And believe me, I say that, and that doesn't mean I haven't really caused, you know, pain to others. You know, sometimes I don't even know how or why, but the fact is it still happens. You know, we have to be, you know, if we really, you know, when we talk about not being offensive, that doesn't mean not to discriminate when somebody does something goofy. It means to really, you know, focus in internally and learn how to do the best that we can to not hurt others.
You know, to be a little conversant here, just in moving to Alachua for the last 2 months, I have had this experience about, devotional service and association being that double-edged sword, that, living away from the association of most devotees for 10 years in Jacksonville, there's less space for being offensive.
Right.
And by Krishna's mercy coming back in, it gives the opportunity to see those little interactions that really matter, and how being careful about the way that we give and receive love with one another is so important. It's like these little things are very, very important. And I love what you're saying. And I just feel so nurturing also.
What is it? What do they say? It's not just a moment to moment. It's a 16th of a second to a 16th of a second to a 16th of a second. Remembering Krishna. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. I mean, it's everything that we do. It's really, the whole point is to make ourselves suitable candidates to someday, one day again, actually be able to associate on a spiritual, an eternal level with the Lord and his devotees. And, we have a ways to go, but at least we have the opportunity to practice and to be with others who want the same, and, to give the best we have and have some very special association in this lifetime.
Is there anything that you want to share with us about your experiences in the Pacific Northwest doing programs stateside?
I loved it. It was very unintentional. Well, it was, I came back from being overseas with malaria.
A gift from abroad.
Okay. Yeah, everything is ultimately.
Yes.
And I even once I healed from the illness, I was too weak to go out and do what I'd been doing, doing Sankirtan. That, especially that kind of rugged Sankirtan that we used to do. So they gave me a van and they just told me to do what I could. And they gave me someone to come with me. And so we thought, well, what are we going to do and where are we going to go? And she said, actually, I have some friends, they're 2 hours from here. Maybe we can go and stay with them. I've always wanted to talk with them about Krishna consciousness, right? So we went to their home, and it was just, it was a hippie home, like a farm home. They had all these canned jars and, property, and they needed to mow the lawn or whatever, and they were really nice people. And, we went and cleaned everything in their house. Like we walked in, we thought, oh my God, this kitchen hasn't been cleaned for a while. So we went and cleaned everything up. And then we cooked a great big prasadam meal. And then we brought out the Bhagavad Gita, and we gave Bhagavad Gita class in the evening and talked about prasadam and our lives as devotees. And they had a wonderful evening. And they said, and that it made an impression on them. They said, actually, if you were living this place, maybe this place I lived before I was a devotee, maybe these people. And I did. So they directed us to the next family, and that particular family had a spa. So they had they had several cabins on their land, and they had people coming all the time. And so they gathered everybody up, and we did a home program again, only this time it was for 35 people. Came that night, and it was Bhagavad Gita, and everyone took a Bhagavad Gita, and we just talked about Bhagavad Gita all night long. I mean, it was incredible. It was wonderful. They were all very receptive, and, and I had known them since, some years back. They even had my guitar there from before I was a devotee.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so from there we established a network. Like each place we would go would give us contacts, and we just went around the Pacific Northwest, and there was so much openness about devotional life. It was amazing. And people were scheduling us and putting us on the radio, and we were doing these home programs. And I remember one day I was driving and we were lost. And I had to use the restroom. And I was just like, where am I going to do that out here? You know, and finally I was just like, Draupadi, just pull over at that house. I'm just going to ask them. I know it sounds weird, but that's what I'm going to do. And so I got out of the house and I knocked on the door and they opened up the door and I said, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm lost and I really need to use the restroom. Oh, sure, no problem. I walk into the house and the kids are lying down on the ground with this old Hare Krishna coloring book. It was an ABC, like, you know, see with cartals, and they were on the ground with Gorny ties sitting next to them, drawing in these coloring books. And I'm like, where did you get that? And they said, you know, we just went to a temple one day and picked up the coloring book. We liked it for our kids. Like, they weren't devotees or anything, but, you know, like they just had like some interest, affinity. And there it was right in front of me, you know, just with a casual knock on the door. So it was like that. I felt like everywhere. Magic. Yeah, that there was just potential everywhere for just sharing Krishna consciousness. We didn't have to browbeat people or, you know, do anything like behind anyone's back, like say we're collecting for this or collecting for that. We could just share Krishna consciousness and people were responding in, you know, such significant ways. I mean, you know, it's like they have that thing like, you know, this thing's worth this much, this thing's worth this much, you know, then this thing is priceless. Like that's what Krishna consciousness is and was. It was the priceless item, you know, and people were just so taken aback that someone would take the time and come to see them, you know, to talk about devotional life. And it was really, really inspiring. And I think I mentioned to you that the very last place that we went to, this was a woman who had inherited a very sizable piece of land in Oregon. And she offered to give us a 500-acre parcel if we would put 4 devotees, 2 householder couples on there long term. She would sign the land over. And the devotees didn't want to do it. And I will never understand why. But, you know, that's the kind of openness of heart that we were greeted with in the Pacific Northwest.
Wow.
Yeah, it was something I'll never forget. And, you know, when I go to sleep at night, my friend used to say that I would go to sleep with a great big huge smile on my face every single night. And I believe it, you know, I believe it because that's how I felt all the way to my core, you know, just so happy, just being Krishna's little devotee, traveling around, just doing that, you know, could have done that forever. And it would have been just the most incredible life experience.
So at a certain point, you did transition out of van life, you could say, and you became a grihasta. You had your first daughter, and you ended up
ISKCON transition, right? I mean, not in a good way. We went through some very hard and very painful days in ISKCON. We had a lot of things to sort out. We were new, we were young, and you know, I think it was meant to be that way. I think we were meant to understand, you know, the good and the bad, the rich and the poor. And I wanted to say that too. That was one of the dynamics for me traveling overseas, was really coming in contact with rich and poor. You know, when I was living in America, I lived kind of suburbia, like we were a kind of upper class suburbia type family, right? You know, most of my life. When I went to the Philippines, you know, I remember walking by a woman one day on, you know, just on the path to somewhere or other. And, you know, everybody knew she was there, but she was alone in the world. And she was elderly. She was, you know, clearly her family or whatever had grown up and there was no one with her anymore. And she lived in, like, her house was 4 bamboo poles with 6 bamboo poles on top, you know, like it was just like across, and then crisscrossed, you know, and that there was no thatching, no, you know, nothing over the poles, just the poles. Like there was no protection from wind or rain or anything. And she just, that was her little space. And she would sit there and weave rattan all day long and make enough for a little rice and a little something else. And that's how she lived. You know, and to see that, and then, you know, simultaneously be in homes of some of the wealthiest people in the world. You know, it was, I went to Christmas one year, and at a devotee family's home, they invited like 5 or 6 of us to go to the mother's house for Christmas. And it was, she lived in Manila. And in order to get there, we literally had to walk over open sewage for over half a mile, literally just to get to her home, which was also over this open sewage. And she was so generous. Everybody in the Philippines, they were so generous. It was so hard to be there. It was grueling and it was poor, you know, and the people who lived there, they didn't even get the fish. They just ate the fish heads. Like it was really, you know, a lot of people really struggled. But that was a real kind of like a builder of character for me, you know.
So you're talking about seeing this dichotomy and really sort of analyzing it and taking it into your heart, and you sort of you're relating that to the good and the bad that has happened in ISKCON, and especially around the time of Prabhupada's departure and our transition through the 70s, the 80s. So
Right.
what do you extract from that now in terms of, you're talking about it in a positive light, that it's, you know, the Sri Upanishad talks about that, right? Seeing, experiencing the material and the spiritual side by side to really have true knowledge. So what is it that you would like to sort of share has been your takeaway, do you think, from experiencing both sides of that within your Hare Krishna life?
It's interesting because at the end of it all, I mean, there was another layer of it, which was my own personal trauma in my life with family and loved ones, and, you know, death and illness and very severe and serious things as well. But, you know, I came out of it, you know, Krishna was, I never had the kind of experience I had like that, where Krishna just was just like, he was just like situated there and he was just helping me. Like I couldn't deny it. You know, I think, you know, I think my faith through much of my devotional life was kind of like, I believed it, but, you know, I didn't have full conviction. But, you know, at the end of it all, Krishna, he just took over. I don't know how to explain it any other way, but it was just like he wasn't going anywhere. I was maybe gonna struggle and do different things, and, you know, and I'm a very conditioned soul, and you know, I have a long way to go in my path in devotional life. Everybody who knows me knows that, but Krishna, yeah, I mean, he was just present, you know, just present for me. And I think we need to, you know, understand matter in its completeness and what it is, you know, and the fact that that is what this world is. It doesn't matter that we're practicing devotional life. This world is what it is. You know, our practice of devotional life matters not in the sense that we're going to make this world better necessarily, although sometimes we will. But it matters in the sense that through these experiences, Krishna is continually there, and you become aware of his personal presence, you know, and that is not a cheap thing. It's not a small thing, and it's not, you know, I mean, I would love to say, yeah, no, that's not true, because it makes you feel foolish. Like, you know, why would anyone have that kind of mercy that Krishna would be there for them? But Krishna is there for each one of us, every one of us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and also I think too that we want this movement to be the best and the most glorious and the most beautiful and the most personal and the greatest source of shelter for every living being. And the only way that we're going to bring it to that point and dimension is by understanding the pitfalls. I don't think we need to be afraid of the pitfalls unless we're not willing to learn from them. You know, if we're going to keep making the same mistakes because we're going to avoid, you know, remembering what happens when we stray away, or when we make small, you know, even just the smallest thing of not seeing people as individuals, you know, in the name of Shastra or some type of something that really is secondary in its importance. We omit the individual, we denigrate or degrade or minimize or not allow service, you know, because of our own personal judgments or prejudices or any of these kinds of things. We don't allow them the facility that Krishna is trying to give them, and we don't allow their growth to their fullest potential, then those are lessons that we are going to have to encounter again and again and again, both in our life and in the growth of our movement. You know, Lord Chaitanya broke open the storehouse of love of God and was eager to give it freely to every living soul that would accept it, whether it was the animals in Jharikanda, or Shivananda's Chain's dog, or anyone in Navadvip, Jagannath Puri, Vrindavan, anyone he met on the road, everyone he met in his travels, the next 7 people all became pure devotees. He wanted everyone to embrace with every bit of their being, heart, and soul, any way that they could connect with Krishna, and, you know, in everything that we do. So, you know, in building our societies and building healthy communities, that's the goal. You know, like when when you accept what's favorable and you reject what's unfavorable, that means that whatever is increasing Krishna consciousness, we accept, and whatever is stayed and, you know, causing that kind of friction and, you know, forgetful, you know, like discouragement in devotional life, we have to reanalyze that, you know, and sometimes see that these things have caused really, really deep pains. You know, we don't always know how deep they go. So we have to be vigilant. We want to be vigilant.
In thinking about your response to that, I'm just, of what I know of you, I'm seeing 2 things. One is, you know, one aspect of what you're talking about in terms of what we need to grow from is your work with the Vaishnavi ministry. And I'm wondering if you want to speak to that a little bit. And the other is the creation of these projects, these platforms, and the initiative of radical personalism that goes towards embracing and encouraging and uplifting. So you're both talking about, you know, like you've said, not sweeping things under the rug, but addressing issues so that we don't have to repeat them. And then also providing a positive place for us to continue to grow. So doing both of those things. Do you want to share first about the Vaishnavi ministry and how you were inspired in that direction?
I was inspired because by Krishna's unending mercy, I had become close to Vishaka, and we were living together, raising our children when they were very, very young. These are our children who are now getting close to their 40s. And, you know, everybody knows Rasamrita, she lives here. So our kids were 2 when we met. And through her association, you know, not only did I hear just in casual, you know, everyday life, the kind of grumblings of dissatisfaction that were sort of, you know, there with the way that ISKCON had kind of, you know, so many things had sort of fallen apart, you know, in terms of Prabhupada used to really support, like, you know, all the creative projects and things in ISKCON, and all the funding for all of that had long been gone. You know, everybody was kind of forced to fend for themselves for any kind of special project. And then just, you know, the facility for women and men were just so polar opposite, you know, men, I was living in Philly with Vishaka in the ashram initially. And the men had these, you know, renovated rooms with beds and hardwood floors and heating, and the women were living, you know, in unrenovated space with no beds or bedding, you know, completely insect infested, and the heaters were broken. I mean, it was just, you know, we're not, you know, people want to cast the effort to be there for the women as being some kind of feminism or radical need for independence and power and all this kind of stuff. Well, probably we should have had more of that, because what was happening to the women was just appalling. I mean, it was just disgraceful. And, you know, it brought tears to my eyes. I mean, I became close to, you know, not close, but I had personal and intimate association with Yamuna and a little with Dina Tarne during that time. And Yamuna had become so discouraged and fragmented. She never expressed that. That wasn't her way. But that was the fact, you know, how she had been treated by her godbrothers and so many things. And the list can go on and on and on of infractions that have nothing to do with protection of women. In the name of protecting women, women were being, you know, minimalized and pushed aside, and only good if they would go out and make money. And it was heartbreaking. In those days, we didn't have internet. We didn't have access to internet like we do now. It was just barely just starting to manifest. And the first time they invited me to Mayapur, I decided to circulate a petition that we wanted to address the concerns. You know, that's all it was, just address the concerns, you know, look realistically to see how women are being treated, what the facilities are like, all these things. And within less than a week, 1,000 people had signed that petition. And that's without the internet. That was just with people walking around and talking to people and mailing back the petitions within a week. I mean, it was really something amazing. And it was like overly impressive at the time in Mayapur. It was kind of like, you couldn't argue with it. You know what I mean? You couldn't just say, because everybody's name was on it. Everybody, you know, everybody signed it. And then, you know, all the proposals we put forward, they all passed unanimously. You know, it wasn't, you know, once the education was in place and, you know, voices that were sincere and equipoised and could present things as they were, no one could argue with it. And, you know, and so everybody just said, yes, we need to make these changes. You know, we need to make these, but some people, they don't like that, you know, for different reasons. They have, I mean, I could get into it. I don't think this is the forum for it, but you know, not everyone wants to care in those ways. They have other motivations, and they make it into something else, and, you know, call people who are trying to help the women names and degrade them as much as possible and make it seem like they had all these evil intentions. The really important thing about whatever we do, you know, first of all, don't call something protection if you're not actually willing to step up to the plate and offer something that actually looks like protection. You know, don't use protection as a way to be mean. You know, use protection as a way to love. You know, in Chopati, they love their families, and they protect. You know, as far as I understand, they protect and they care. And so you can take very traditional values and they can become very beautiful, or you can push very traditional values and they become very distorted, depending on where, you know, what the actual true intention is. So at the end of the day, each one of us comes with, you know, with a spirit to want to serve. And we need to find a way to make sure that that seed of devotion is protected and cared for. And Prabhupada didn't make distinguishment. You know, women came that were young, they came with children, they came in all different ways. And Prabhupada loved all of his devotees, all of his disciples. And he always wanted the best for all of them, and he could never understand anything less. Yeah. You know, no matter how traditional we are, love comes first. Or how traditional we're not. You know, if someone's living in New York City and they have to work every day to support themselves, it doesn't make them less of a person, because that's not traditional.
Thank you so much for.
I mean, was that okay? Was that an okay explanation? Because there's so many levels of it.
Of course.
I don't
No,
know where I'm going to go when I talk about these things.
yeah, I'm just reflecting on, the daunting task that, is and was before you and your peers, and how, there's so much detail that we can and should go into historically with that. But just from a personal perspective, I was blessed to come into Krishna consciousness in an incredibly healthy environment, which equally embraced the boys and the girls and empowered us and made us feel like we had something important to bring to the table. And I feel like that's definitely evidence of your work in that vein. And
I mean, I don't think so. I just think it's a natural way that things be, and Kalakanta understood that, right? I mean, he had a wife. He's married to Jita Amrita all these years, and he understands, that people want to be engaged and they want to be happy. They don't want to just be a role in somebody's life. They want to, be a full persona. And and what was your experience from that? I mean, for you, I'm sure it was perfectly natural, but I bet also for the for the young men that you were with, it was also perfectly natural. They weren't feeling like, oh my God, we can't do this. It was just a very easy way to work and serve and spread Krishna consciousness.
I remember hearing so often at Krishna House, and I want to segue into your projects, if that's okay. I remember hearing, just add Krishna, and just add Krishna to your life. And that's basically our motto, and give it a try and see what happens. And when we add Krishna, these incredible magical things start happening. And I was reading this article that was written in January that was celebrating the 1-year anniversary of Hare Krishna Community Radio, which you created. And you were saying the same thing, just add Krishna. And there's something that I wanted to read. And before we talk a little bit about that. You've started this radio. I remember you talking about it prior to its inception. You were brainstorming it for some time, and you were talking about it. And I was thinking to myself, this sounds like such a big undertaking. I really can't understand how it's possibly going to happen, either from a practical point of view or just a creative point of view. How is this going to come into being? And now it's here. And you've done it.
It's starting. Yeah,
you've done it.
I would say it's here. I would just say that we have got our feet on the ground.
Yes,
we have a platform to start with. Yeah.
Okay, so that is an extraordinary accomplishment, and actually, you were telling me that you have 800 regular listeners, weekly listeners, right, or daily listeners.
We have about 800 a week right now listening, which I know is not a lot. But you've got to remember that the only place that we're even getting the word out, really, except for 2 articles in ISKCON News, the only other place that we ever put the word out about the radio at all is here in Alachua, however much I do or don't do that, which is, I mean, a small portion of what I could be doing just here in Alachua and in Durban, because that's where we have people who are broadcasting. And then the other person who's broadcasting is out of Philly, but she's very quiet. She doesn't advertise, right? So, okay. But she has a reading group. She's in one of these big reading groups, and so some of her people listen. So we have a pretty good listenership in India too because of her reading group. And that's it. We're not, that's it. Like, there's no push to get the news about the radio out. But having said that, so many devotees have lent their name to the radio. I mean, so many musicians and the talk show, podcast hosts and, our leading devotees. And yes, you can use my material, you can use my name, and there's so much amazing material out there, I mean, there's just incredible stuff. So sorting through all that, building the library, trying to figure out how to, where to start. I I want to make an outreach program, but right now I don't even have the quality I want for the devotees. You know, it's like there's a lot of work to be done, which probably leads you to some of the other things you want to ask me about. So I'll just be quiet there.
Well, first I want to read this paragraph. I think it is important too that the radio programming, as well as all of our outreach, emulate a mood of open-heartedness, kindness, and giving in a way that encourages every individual, no matter what their situation is, to feel that there is a place for them in the spiritual society and the spiritual world. And then you told a story that Rukmini Prabhu shares, which is that Prabhupada is speaking with a devotee, and the devotee says, "How can I serve you?" Do you want to finish that story for us?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's Rukmini's story because I haven't read it on paper, but the story goes that I think this was somebody that was like new to the movement, and he got to ask Srila Prabhupada, you know, what can I do to serve you? And Srila Prabhupada said, you can go where I can't go, you know, to give people Krishna consciousness. And he was like, well, Srila Prabhupada, you go everywhere. You know, there is no place that you don't go. And he said, you can go to the future, you know. And by how you show your love, then the people that you're speaking with will know that Krishna loves them. That's how that, you know, it will come because of your love, that they'll know how much Krishna loves them. And also how much Prabhupada loves them. So, you know, we have a wonderful gift. You know, we don't need to be hitting people over the head or trying to prove ourselves or do any of that kind of stuff. We just need to be encouraging and kind, you know, and open the door as much as we can.
I love this Prabhupada story, and I love this mood so much because so your mission is to not only provide this programming that any listener can tune in and feel included, but also to provide a place for us devotees to come and express our creative interest, so to speak, on the radio itself. So there's so many ways that we can get involved, and that's why you're saying it's a community radio, is because
right. That's why I gave it that name. Yeah,
it's meant to be an interaction between devotees and listeners. And so tell us, please, what are the different ways, because there's the front of the stage and the back of the stage ways that people can be involved.
Okay, well, I mean, first of all, we have a very long way to get to that point where that personalism is being exuded, where that warmth is being exuded, where the innovation is present, that we can, you know, present Krishna consciousness on so many levels and platforms, lifestyle, intellectually, socially, you know, all the different elements of life that people are living can be seen from a Krishna conscious perspective. And for us to reach out in those ways and to build, you know, that connection takes some real thought and creativity. You know, we're very concerned about our own spiritual lives and, you know, being able to make advancement back home, back to Godhead. But I also know that one of the best ways to do that is when you bring somebody else along with you, right? And the radio is kind of a unique platform because it's very easy to work with. It's really easy to edit audio and do all that kind of stuff. And we can, you know, introduce so much there. But right now, I mean, I have devotees that are doing shows in South Africa, and you can tune in and hear their shows on Saturdays. Their shows are going most of the day on Saturday, and then again also on Tuesday mornings from 8 to like noon or so, or 2, I think. But and then I have Tiffany Cooper on behalf of the Vaishnavi ministry doing programming on Fridays for the, well, you know, it's representative of women's involvement in ISKCON. But all the rest of it, I'm just loading everything up on my own, you know, and it takes a lot of time to find content and to put it up there and to organize it and to do all that. And so it's prohibitive for me to actually really develop the innovative direction of the radio because I'm always just loading up content. And what I'm really, you know, hoping for is that more people like the devotees in South Africa can pick up and take ownership, the radio is a platform. It's meant for others to come together and bring what they have to the table and offer that. And it's, you know, like, it's open, it's free to them to do that. You know, the only requirement is that things are positive, you know, and helpful. Like, you know, it's not a place to banter. It's just a place to give, you know, and to be creative about it. And there's so many incredible things that we could be doing. I could talk to you for the next hour with my ideas, much less other people's. So what you can do to help make that vision come alive is, first of all, listen. Second of all, share. You know, third of all, think about, like, are you one of the people like me? I always thought, wow, there could be no cooler job in the world than to be a disc jockey, you know, to play music and get to pick it. Like, what could be like a better life than that? Like, are you inclined? I mean, really, do you have that kind of interest to want to, you know, put together playlists and play them for people, or, you know, to interview people and to talk about interesting aspects of devotional life, and, you know, to be in contact like that, and, you know, get people interested to be a show host, to be a podcast host, to interview, to, you know, to be a DJ? Do you have that kind of interest? Because we need people like that, you know, to build the show. And especially we're looking for people that, you know, come from different walks of life and different demographics in different areas. When I first was trying to decide what to call the radio, one of the choices that I really, really liked was Everyday Yogi. You know, and I didn't think that I could carry the name initially because no one would know what I was talking about, really, you know, so I went with Hare Krishna Community Radio. But the idea of Everyday Yogi is that it's about you and me and our moment-to-moment meditations and thoughts and experiences and sharing and giving, right? So
cool.
Yeah, so in order for that vision to come alive, it has to be something that we share together and do. And, you know, just like you were talking earlier, everybody has that creativity, that special spark. And we all want to do a certain amount just to help with the general good, you know, like wash the pots if need be, or, you know, mow the lawn, or do whatever needs to do. But we also need to find the special gifts that Krishna has given us, each one of us, and make a special offering out of that. You know, and of course, you know, when we're raising children and we're doing those things, we may be in a planning stage. You know, we may be contemplating and thinking and learning lessons and doing all those things, but it is going to come to fruition. So how are we going to take, you know, everything that we've been given and experienced and really turn that around and offer it back? You know, and the radio is, you know, there's a vision for it there that, you know, and just think how many people could be listening. If 800 people are listening just in Durban and Gainesville with very little advertisement, can you imagine if we really built up something special and got the word out about that everywhere? You know.
So when we go on our personal Facebook pages, I mean, you can Google Hare Krishna Community Radio and get to it that way. And we can post a link on this video.
Yeah. Okay, so there is a link from the Facebook page to get to the radio.
Okay.
Also, you can just look up Hare Krishna Community Radio and you'll find it. Just put it in your search engine.
And it's literally broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And we play everything. I mean, you know, we play everything from, you know, Kadamba Kanana to, you know, to a little kid singing Hare Krishna, to Gauravani, to Agni Dev, to, you know, I mean, all of it. We play everything, you know, that's out there. We have a lot of varied programming. We do, you know, 1 day a week, we do our days with Srila Prabhupada, and it's all, you know, kirtan from the 60s and 70s, memories. We've been reading from Mukunda Maharaj has, you know, given us, thank you, Mukunda Maharaj, has given us permission to air a Miracle on 2nd Avenue. So we air that while we're playing the kirtans, and Siddhanta's given us permission to for the memories, and then there's so many other memories that are available online. The devotees are very open, you know, everyone I ask, pretty much everyone I've asked for permission. I try and get permission. You know, I can't get everybody, but I try and get permission for everything and build a base of, you know, stuff that we have permission to play, right? And at least that we honor the contributions of each person who's making and creating, you know, that beautiful offering. So, you know, we're able to play like some of the drama stuff, like, you know, Sankirtan's readings and Parivida's stuff, and we play from the Bhaktivedanta players and the dramas in Chopati and just different places. Like, you know, we play the old Golden Avatar audio tapes and stuff like that. You know, we have a lot of content on festival days where, you know, appearance or disappearance of the different acharyas, and you can hear the pastimes by different devotees and, you know, different music and stuff around that. You know, around Ratha Yatra, around Balaram's appearance day, all the different festivals, we have content, you know, for those days. And we do, you know, we have, you know, other types of programming too. We have like East meets West in devotional song, right? So yeah, you can guess the kind of music that we would be playing there. It's really a mixture. I mean, sometimes you just have music that has, you know, Western instruments with Eastern bhajan, and other times you have, you know, like Gauravani singing "You've Got a Friend," and you know he's singing about Krishna, you know. So it's a full variety. So, you know, we try and offer as much of an interesting variety, and the more people that can get in there with us and help us, not only can voices then be on the radio instead of just uploading, you know, where it becomes more personal like that, but also we'll have more interesting and varied inclusions. You know, people will put up what they like and make it interesting for other people. So, yeah.
Congratulations, Sudharma Prabhu. This is really cool. I can hear in your voice that spark that you have when you're talking about your Sankirtan adventures, and I'm praying that you know, I've had this reflection during other interviews. I'm praying that each of us finds or is currently involved in a project that gives us that kind of life. And,
Exactly.
And hearing that, you know, it's sort of an automatic feeling that like I want in on that, you know.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It's everything for me right now. I mean, you know, my health is very poor. It's just not good. But do you think that's what I'm thinking about? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I have to deal with that. I have to contend with that. It's a reality in my life. But that's not what's driving me. It's that something is still alive, you know, that fire is still inside, giving me a purpose and a feeling of, you know, something wonderful that I want to share. You know, I just have to be patient. I know that it's something that I want to do. It's not necessarily what other people think is important. I just depend on Krishna. But if other people can somehow see that there's something really special here and get on board, this could be really incredible. And I hope it's something that will go on even after I'm not here anymore. I hope that the radio will just become established as, you know, a part of our movement and who we are and how we can reach out to others. And the way for that to happen is for other people to feel ownership in it. It's not my radio, it's Hare Krishna community radio. Yeah, I'm just holding it together until other people get there. That's what I'm hoping for.
And we can do it from our own homes.
That's the amazing part of it. I mean, the digital world is amazing these days, right? So yeah, you can do good quality work.
I feel like COVID has sort of started to bring our movement closer into that space of using, you know,
the whole world. It did the whole world. But that's right. We finally took it seriously when we were isolated, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, radio, it's just, I mean, just look at the history of radio and how it's impacted the world. You know, audio. First of all, our movement is based on sound. You know, the process is about sound. It's about audio, you know, receiving something in your ear, right? The mantra, the Bhagavatam, the pastimes. It's an audio process right from the very beginning. That's point number one. You know, and then even just historic, and I mean, look at how important sound is. I mean, Sanskrit sung and Krishna plays the flute. I mean, you can go on and on and on about sound in devotional life. I mean, it's just something, you know, just wow, amazingly special and incredible. But, you know, I mean, even just things like, you know, how even in modern days, and, you know, like I begrudge using the examples, but people at different points in time, whether it was just before World War II or Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or, you know, the right wing left, have used the radio in such powerful ways to change the thinking of the world. You know, I mean, radio is a powerful media. You know, just because we can see each other now on Zoom doesn't mean we should forsake radio, because audio goes deep. You know, it goes very, very deep.
Yes. And it can be, it's more available to us. It's more accessible, actually, than having to sit down and watch a video.
Yeah, well, and it affects different parts of your brain. That's another whole thing that they've proven. Yeah. Yeah, you know, because instead of making your brain, you know, go to sleep, so to speak, it awakens your thought processes and your creativity.
Sudharma Prabhu, we are
sorry.
Don't be. This has been absolutely fantastic. I want to touch on as a finale. You know, you had spoken to me previously about this, like the consummation of a life of service and the things that are meaningful to you and what you have experienced and want to pass on. Would you like to share that with us?
Oh my, I don't even really know where I would begin with that. You know, I think that first of all, you know, we're at a very crucial transitional point in the life of Krishna consciousness in the West, especially, you know, but really internationally, because Prabhupada came to the West and, you know, brought Krishna consciousness here and showed us how to be devotees, you know, in San Francisco in the 60s and in New York City, in, you know, all types of environments, and, you know, and he knew how to engage and bring people together. And that whole generation that, you know, saw something, you know, dynamic and world changing, we're all passing on. And our experiences are unique, you know, and it isn't just like, you know, the 10 people who, you know, somehow have proven the most steady, but all of us have, you know, really thoughtful experiences on a journey that's, you know, been otherworldly for us in our lives. You know, even people who didn't stay have, there's always something special about their time that they had with Krishna consciousness, right? One way or the other. So yeah, I mean, I've learned many lessons on this path and on this journey. I think, of course, the first and the biggest one is just how small and tiny we are in the world, and that, you know, that we're having an opportunity to practice devotional life. I mean, I know for me, I have a very long way to go, but I'm very, very happy. And one thing that I want is to see that happiness for everyone who practices. So I think one of my very first lessons I had as a devotee is don't try to fit square pegs into round holes. You know, really learn to value who the person is and engage them according to what they can do best. Because trying to fulfill the immediate could mean that we lose the long term, right? So we need to learn how to be generous with others in their approach to their devotional life, and encouraging for others in their approach to their devotional life. And we need to learn to feel how to be open to be able to be inquisitive because we're comfortable to inquire and speak our minds and not necessarily always agree with everything. It's not necessary to do that. You know, our ability to contend with differences is based on our own maturity.
Mm.
So the best way to be mature is to learn how to contend with differences. And on the flip side of that, we have to learn how to get out of the polarities that we tend to face, you know, like where everything's all, you know, absolutely right and absolutely wrong, because that's not the nature of this world. It's always mixed. You know, I can't say that enough. Everything around us is mixed. I mean, you're going to find dirt on the Pujari room floor, and you're going to find glory, you know, in, you know, an insect. I mean, it's the nature of this world. And along with that, you're going to find some really horrible things, and you're going to find some incredibly amazing, beautiful things. And we shouldn't reject the negative, and we shouldn't reject the positive. You know, the positive is Krishna's artwork. You know, when your little child comes home from school and they show you their picture that they drew, and you go, that Maya, doesn't make any sense. Everything in this world is Krishna's. I love the story. There's a little story, one story that I always like hearing. I think Radhanath Swami tells this, and I think it's probably a Prabhupada story, but I don't know that with certainty. But Radhanath Swami tells it, and I like it. Two people walking, and one says, "Oh, look at the beautiful sunset." And, you know, I'm used to hearing, "Oh, that's Maya," right? Like, you know, don't be attached to the sunset. But in this story, the person says, "If you think the sunset's beautiful, you should see the artist." Right? So Krishna's hand is in everything. Patience is a really big lesson. Tolerance is a big lesson. And not thinking that we have it right. It's more important that we're listeners than it is that we're always trying to tell people what we think. I mean, when I listen back to the things that I used to say when I was a young devotee, it's absolutely embarrassing. Right? And I thought I had it, you know, just like a kid when they're 5, they think they know it all already, right? You know, they figure the world out around them. So yeah, we're learning, you know, we're learning, and we need to be listeners more than we need to be. But that doesn't mean that we don't share what's important and what, you know, when Krishna inspires us, you know, to share something, we do. And that is very inspirational for us as well, right? But we're not doing it as a matter of course because we think we know everything and no one else does, or that everybody else is wrong or everybody else is in Maya. I really like Giriraj Swami gave a talk one time, and he talked about Vaikuntha thinking. I really liked his point. He was remembering, you know, an incident with Srila Prabhupada. And, you know, basically what it came down to was something I mentioned earlier. When somebody's doing well, we all benefit from that. Mm. And when someone's struggling, we all are affected by that. So we owe it to ourselves to take the time to encourage others, because that builds shelter for us as well. You know, when people are leaving and becoming discouraged and falling by the wayside, it's not a sign of our strength that we stay despite that. It's a sign of something that needs to be addressed. You know, that we build a world where, you know, we don't just say no one's left behind, we actually live it. You know, we care. I mean, look at Prahlad Maharaj. He was prepared to come back as many lifetimes as it would take to deliver everyone back home, back to Godhead. That's the mood of the devotee. You know, we're not concerned about our own strength as much, because we know that when we are taking the time in the right way to really be there for others, then we gain our strength.
I have very personal experience with this, listeners, because right before this recording, I was literally in tears, just with my, you know, just feeling a lack of autonomy right now as a young mom and barely scooping together minutes to, you know, have time for things like this. And just sitting and talking with you about that for a few minutes gave me everything I needed to feel like I can do this. And then getting to have this conversation with you is so, it fills the cup so full that it keeps us going. It keeps us feeling inspired. It gives us life. It's life-giving. And so, you know, that is so, what you're saying, I think, is just so crucial and beautiful, to give each other the time and the nurturing that we need to feel energized on a daily basis through life. What you're saying is so full of this mix of experiences, but to remember, like you've said, that Krishna is holding our hand through it all, and that we're here to support each other in remembering that, really.
And I think, you know, in lieu of what we've been speaking about too, that's one of the reasons why the voices, the feminine voices, the voices of motherhood are very important to be heard. You know, they're not meant to be stifled. You know, they're, you know, you adore your mother. You don't stick her in a corner and tell her never to come out, right? So, you know, that, I think when I had my child, my first child, something awoke in me in terms of care. And I'm sure every mother experiences that. But we don't just have that just for our children. You know, the examples there in the Ramayana, for example, that, you know, that for the king, everyone, they see equally, every citizen, just like their own children.
Sudharma Prabhu, I want to thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I know there are quite a few things.
Me.
There it's our great honor. There are quite a few things that, you know, we didn't really dig into, like your bookstore in New Vrindavan, which I know was selling literally like the record number of books in the country.
It was Krishna's kindness, and it was a great service. I mean, again, to be able to do that with, you know, your child who wasn't even 1 year old sitting next to you in a little, you know, cradle bassinet, and being able to sell all these Bhagavad Gitas and everything, it was a wonderful experience.
It's very encouraging to hear stories like that. It's important for you know, my peer group, I think, to remember that.
Because anything that we did, you guys can do. I mean, I didn't get to have that personal association with Srila Prabhupada like a lot of my god sisters that I've had the blessing of being, you know, good friends with through the years. I was just a young devotee, and I had to serve in the mood of separation with Srila Prabhupada. So anything that you know, that I've been able to do, it wasn't just because it was then. It's, you know, something anyone can do, right? Anyone can do it.
Yes. We can do it.
It's just where your heart will take you.
We can do it.
Have faith in Krishna, you know, totally dependent upon Krishna, and just take the next step. And let Krishna be in charge. It works, it doesn't work, it's up to Krishna.
Haribol.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been total nectar.
And you're always inspiring for me, Amrita-Keli. You inspire me greatly. I love your energy and your enthusiasm, and, you know, and it makes me feel really good about the heart of our movement and its future and direction. You know, knowing devotees like you, but especially you for me, because you've always been an inspiration for me. So thank you.
Thank you for encouraging little old me.
Yeah.
And everyone. Thank you for encouraging all of us. We feel it.
Yeah. I do feel encouraged by all the service that everyone does.
Thank you,
A million
everyone.
thank yous to all the devotees, and thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thanks
Hare
for tuning
Krishna.
in
Be
to
happy.
episode 24 of Nectar Talks in the books. And we hope you have a wonderful remainder of your month or 2 weeks until we get our next episode out. Look for us. And please likes and share Hare Krishna Community Radio. We want listeners and we want DJs. We want voices. We want roundtables. This is for all of us to participate in. So seek your heart. Okay, everyone.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Glory to Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.